President Trump and Vice President Mike Pence have finally spoken, marking their first conversation since the deadly assault on the U.S. Capitol. A senior administration official described the Oval Office meeting as, quote, good. Previously, CBS News had learned that the vice president was, quote, hurt and stunned that the president never called him after the pro-Trump supporters attacked the Capitol Wednesday. Pence, who was on the Hill at the time to confirm Biden's electoral win, was forced to shelter in a bunker as rioters stormed the building. Images even show some chanting, "Hang Mike Pence." All right, so for more, let us bring in CBS News White House correspondent Paula Reid. Paula, as we mentioned, this is being described as a good conversation. What can you tell us about the conversation between the president and his vice president in the Oval Office yesterday?
Well, Anne-Marie, we know until yesterday the president and his extremely loyal vice president had not spoken since the events of Wednesday. But we've learned that yesterday night they did speak in the Oval Office for a time. But we're told that the vice president and his aides have been shocked and saddened by the president's dismissive treatment of the events that have transpired over the past several years. Of course, the vice president was up on the Capitol when it was attacked, and he has been the target of many death threats. Something that the president could potentially come out and try to tamp down, since many of these are coming from some of his supporters. Now, while the president is increasingly isolated here at the White House with just a few aides, we don't hear much from him. He says he's not going to go to the inauguration. There are a lot of folks who are trying to encourage the vice president to step up and show how there can be a smooth transition, to meet with the incoming president and or vice president and to attend the inauguration and try to, again, demonstrate for the country that at least some people at the top of this administration are willing to go forward with a smooth transition of power.
So, Paula, acting Homeland Security Secretary Chad Wolf becomes the latest cabinet member to resign after the insurrection. In a message to staff, he cited recent events, including legal challenges to his authority to run the department on an acting basis without Senate confirmation. I note for our viewers that Fran Townsend, who is a former Deputy Homeland Security official for the George W. Bush administration, said this on CBS this morning: the resignation of the Homeland Security Secretary 9 days before a national security special event that he himself is responsible for is both disgraceful and irresponsible. It's a cover for somebody who's a coward. What more can you tell us about Mr. Wolf's decision?
Well, here there have been numerous legal battles about his appointment and whether he actually is a legitimate secretary, whether he can actually carry out the president's policies. That's something that has been going on for a long time. But to cite that as the reason that he's departing now, it feels like pretext. And he is, as you noted, not the first cabinet official to step down since the unprecedented attack on the Capitol. In fact, he is the third cabinet member to resign since those events. Now, the consequence of this, then the national security risk, as Fran noted, it is significant. There are a lot of concerns about what's going to happen at the inauguration next week. There are a lot of concerns about what happened last week and inefficient or ineffective communication and coordination among law enforcement. So this move at this time, as Fran noted, history may not be kind.
So today, the president is traveling to South Texas to sort of survey the border wall. This will be his first public appearance since his own supporters overran the Capitol building. What's the strategy here? Is this sort of some attempt at a, I don't know, like a victory lap, kind of in the waning days of his presidency? What's going on?
Well, victory lap may be a little too strong, but I do think it's fair to say that he's trying to change the conversation. He's trying to shift the focus away from what happened last Wednesday onto his accomplishments. Change the conversation, shift the focus, and remind people why he was elected in the first place and what he was able to do for his supporters while he was here. Of course, immigration policy, specifically a border wall that has not been built to the extent that was promised. Certainly, he wants to highlight that, emphasize that. We also saw him yesterday giving the Medal of Freedom, Presidential Medal of Freedom, to Congressman Jim Jordan, one of his most loyal supporters. Another thing that presidents do here, getting back to routine business, but it's not routine. Nothing in the wake of Wednesday's events can be routine. And what's so significant about giving the Presidential Medal of Freedom to Congressman Jordan is that he was one of a handful of lawmakers who objected to the Electoral College results. He was so integral to that resistance on the Hill that it really does send a message if that that's who you are selecting. Now, of course, we also know Bill Belichick, he has declined that honor, citing recent events. So even if the president is trying to get back to business, he is trying to change the conversation. Not everyone is on board with that, and it would be very unlikely that he could do that successfully, given the magnitude of what happened last week, and also how most people are looking ahead to the inauguration in the next few days and worrying about similar events.
Paula, having covered this president throughout the course of his administration, it's hard to get into his mind and to know what he might say or what he might do as he prepares to head out to Texas. But do we expect him at all to address the potential for a second impeachment trial, the calls for him to resign, the fact that he, according to reports out there, that he never checked in with the vice president or the vice president's family after we now know that the vice president and members of Congress and the Senate were in great physical danger during that insurrection on Wednesday? I mean, could we expect to hear him continue to peddle the notion, the lie, that he won the election?
It's certainly possible. The president really has not been leaning in to his public messaging very much. Certainly, we have barely heard from him since he's lost his Twitter account and other social media outlets. But anytime the president wants, he's just yards away from the briefing room. He can come down, say anything he wants. Sometimes he takes questions, sometimes he doesn't. But if he had a message to push out, he could do it there easily. He hasn't answered questions from reporters, and I believe our reporting is about a month, maybe a little bit more. He's stayed away from cameras. He does not seem to want to answer questions, and he doesn't seem to have any sort of coherent message for the country. So I would be very surprised if we hear from him on any of those issues. But as we know, President Trump is full of surprises.
So true. Paula, thank you.